This week, it was all about Italy. Italian stocks had the worst week since November 2016. Italian stocks had the worst two-week drop since June 2016. Italian banks had the worst week since June 2016. The Italian two-year spread to the Bund had the biggest spike since July 2012. Italian redenomination risk had the biggest spike ever to a record high. Well, don't worry about Italy. I'll keep my eye on that. And then, what do you do when push becomes shove? Well, you butt out. Let's take a look. I'm going to start off with looking at the 10-year Treasury note, and the symbol is TNX, and we're looking at the 6-month daily chart on MarketWatch. My regular charts aren't working today, so we'll use MarketWatch. Hopefully I don't get in trouble. And looking at the bond here, we topped out just above 3.1, and we headed down most of this week, and it closed today at 2.931. You just have to move the decimal. But that's the yield on the current 10-year Treasury bond. So things were moving down, and as you would imagine, the TLT that I hold was heading on the way up, and I was making some bank. However, I decided to exit today for a particular reason that we'll look at closer here in a moment. So looking here, though, at the other oscillators on the TNX, move down here, the MACD is heading on down, and it shows that the stochastic and the Williams is already down, and it's going to these will move probably sideways while the MACD continues on down, and I would imagine that the yield again at 2.931 is probably going to head to the 28 or 2.8 level. So now let's go ahead and take a look at TLT. And this is the 6-month daily chart on TLT. Again, the iShares 20-plus year Treasury bond. And as you can see here, it bottomed out just above 116 and headed on up not quite to 120. And this is essentially the inverse of the TNX that we just looked at. And so if you look at the oscillators, they will be essentially a mirror or the inverse. Looking here, you see that the fast line crossed through up on the way through the trigger line here. And then again, the stochastic and the Williams, they're topping up here. They'll probably go a little bit sideways, more or less, while the price continues to increase. Now, as I told you, I exited, and this is why. Looking at the daily, I'm going to do a 10-year hourly chart here and reset this, and move it on down. You can see that it bottomed at about, as I said, in the 116 level, and it was doing just fine on the way on up here. However, as you can see, we have this day movement here, and this here, and then this today. Now, this is not normal. And in my opinion, when something's not normal, I start to get suspicious. I'm not sure if there's any manipulation in the market right now. I tend to think so, certainly because this is a bond. And there's lots and lots of manipulation, not only in the stock market, but certainly in the bonds. And so I sense something is going on. And even though I'm making a profit, when push comes to shove, then you butt out. So I exited. And I will look at this over the subsequent days and weeks here before I do any re-entry. But I just wanted to get you up to date on that one. I sense something is off, a little odd, and I exit. All right, so now let's just go to the monthly chart on the SPY. This is the all data monthly chart on the spiders, and as you can see here in the upper right portion of the chart, we're having several months of congestion here. It's not quite ready to head on up, but it certainly looks like it wants to, and we can see that here on the MACD. The fast line has come down very close to the slow line, but it looks like it wants to try to move and reflect off of that and head on up. Looks like the histogram is almost down to 0, so it's very close, but I'm looking for a reflection. We see a little bit of that here in the stochastic, just a sideways, just a real slight sideways movement in here. But in the WIMS, we actually see a reflection off of that midline. So it looks to me that it wants to head on up, but not quite able to do that yet. So let's go take a look now at the 2-year weekly chart and reset and back down here. Moving on, we can see that the weekly chart looks a little bit better. We've got a good dish here. We still have this trend line. I don't have the annotation feature here, so you're just going to have to imagine a trend line here heading down. And then, of course, we have the trend moving up here that's going to create that wedge. Looking at the MACD, it looks like we're very close. We're above 0, so we are in a point of strength. Now the stochastic and the Williams are heading up to the top, so they have a little bit more power left in them. I'm not sure if that's going to be enough to help get that fast line through the slow line here, but I'm thinking that there's going to be a little bit of a hesitation, and then we head on up through there. So the hesitation is going to be in the daily, and let me go show you that. Moving here to the 6-month daily and reset the chart. And we move on down here. You can see that the trading the last week or two, we've been going sideways. I talked about some hesitation here. I'm expecting this to head down a little bit. It hasn't yet. In this move here, it did the same thing. It stopped, hesitated, and then we did about a 50% retracement. From this measure here to this top here, this was about a 50% retracement. So from this move up here, I'm looking for a little bit more retracement than this point here. And we haven't got it yet. But it looks like to me that the MACD wants to head down. It may reflect off as it kind of did in here. It may do the same thing, but the slow stochastic and the Williams looks to me that they want to head down, so I would be expecting that the fast line on the MACD pierces through just very, very gently through that slow line to trigger line, and maybe we go a little bit negative here, and then hopefully we get the price coming down at least a little bit more than it has. I don't know if it's going to do a 50% retracement, but I'd like to see a little bit more retracement before everything reloads, and then hopefully that's the last of the downside before we start heading up in a little bit more stronger fashion. So we just still have more time as this starts to gain some strength here. But I think my overall idea or hypothesis of the stock moving on up and heading to the previous highs is still intact. But we'll just have to wait and see. So for today, that's ChewDog Charts. Thank you.